There we go. So after I reviewed our first interview, and just in the dynamic there of you're both as a a personal explorer, personal kink-oriented journey going on, and then this more generalized context of what's that about in the cultural sense and the political sense and the gendered sense, all those different aspects that come into that. I thought, I've had this idea, I think I mentioned, of creating a streaming video, downloadable only kind of product line, of the 10-part series of conscious erotic dominance for het men. And that's one of the potentials I saw with, I don't know a lot about your background. I checked it out a bit and saw and hear what you're up to, I believe, but of the potential of some sort of collaboration on that product idea.
Yeah, we can talk about that. It's more of a business conversation at some point, or we can discuss the content of it. And it's definitely something I'd be interested in. And I've produced lots of online products in the past and helped market them and whatnot. So, and I think for the sake of your intended audience, I mean, hopefully there will be people that view this video who either signed up for it or expressed an interest. So we should probably delve into the content of what you're asking to deliver, you're promising to deliver during this point. How about that? But definitely, I like the idea of the subject, erotic dominance for het men. And there's a lot of, we could either kind of start to delve into that in this call or, frame what that could look like. I think there's something that, has come up in, I think, the recent, kink community around consent and what it means to respect and honor people's consent. I mean, that is definitely, a worthy topic. It belongs in, maybe this conversation, but also what it means to be a cis het male and to be fairly dominant and how one expresses their sexuality, and to also really honor the boundaries of consent. And there's also whatever content you wanted to discuss on this call.
So I'm kind of contemplating all that versus the original content for this particular thing, and in a way, so I see, since I broadcast that as what this session was about, I probably should go into that, record that, then it can be up, and I spoke to the situation, and then we can pick up this conversation of content, specific content, and this mutual idea to do something and see what that can look like later.
Yeah, let's do the call now and then have the other discussion later on. Set up a time.
Yeah. So I'm glad we'll be interactive, because I didn't have time to prepare slides to kind of go along and take us down a path that way. So I'm going to be speaking a more impromptu. So if anything leads to interchange, that would be good to keep me going. So in today's webinar, I'm going to speak to or address what I identified as the third key to integrating your sexuality into your life, and that's sexual empowerment, erotic empowerment, embodiment. These are the place where to really get to the rich depth of the experience. It's an embodied experience. To be into kink and DS on either side of that power exchange, the deep experience is in the body. So this is today, I want to journey more into the things that go on or are going on within a person from my experience and from my own experience in the body, and how tuning into that can be very important to gaining this deeper experience, an embodied experience. That's an enlivened experience. And so many people in our culture, because we live for the neck up, are disembodied. They really literally don't even realize that they have a body, that has millions of messagings that can be going on just with a little simple movement. That's all enlivening in the body and bringing attention to the body, and therefore one can start to notice more about their body. So movement is important. So in the sexual empowerment, this is using the body to get as the gateway to a more present state of mind, a more present state of being. That includes being in the breath. These are reminders. Anytime I get notice that I'm kind of running around, kind of not here, I try to remember to take a breath right there and just slow it down. So this is an unfortunate area of clinical practice of there's no touch involved. In a situation where a client, there's all kinds of ways of touching, therapeutic touch of one sort or another, that could be really powerfully helpful to that person, to help them just feel something themselves, something that they've buried, pushed down, and have disembodied from. So these are all elements that a client might need, and the therapeutic profession isn't really geared at this point to support them. So this is what I want to do, is help bring more into the conversation about what the needs are of a client at these particular parts of their journey. And in this regard today, of focusing in more on the body, because the body is the analog of the unconscious, is my experience. So all the body is telling the same story that the unconscious messaging, the unconscious little myth going on, that I'm not worthy, I'm a piece of shit, nobody loves me, I'm going to get abandoned, I'm not good enough. All of those kinds of, if someone has those kinds of internal messages, it's in the body too, because it's an expression. These are emotional messages, and all of our emotions express through the body, through gestures. We are wired to gesture our emotional state. But the problem, what's happened in our culture, this disembodied culture, is that people have tried to hold back that physical expression of their joy, their anger, their sorrow, whatever the emotion might be. And they've been met in some way that has taken their power away to express that truth. It's too risky, it's scary to express that truth. People have been wounded in ways that have, by our parents and other authority figures, mythical or real. And so we take on these two things occur. A natural expression is the innate gesture, like a child sees its mother, a 3-year-old sees its mother enter the room and its arms, and it starts,
open.
Yeah, totally open and beaming. And then the mother looks at it and says, didn't you, just kind of totally
ouch,
cut the legs off of that exuberant expression, to where now it's learned, the body's wanting to do this still, because that exuberant child is still part of the being. And so it is going like this, while the other part is holding the arms down, locked them down. Maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but the metaphor is, and this is muscular tension. It takes physical force to withhold that gesture. So, we are a culture that masks our authentic truth, and it takes amazing amounts of force and energy to hide that. And and we can't hide it. Ultimately, we don't hide it. The body shows it up in subtle ways, or suddenly, shoo, it's like a spring held down that people will blow their top, or
Mm.
slam their fist on the table, or kick the wall, just some boom, which usually has nothing to do with the immediate situation so much. So these are all things that people are going to encounter on their journey to sexual authenticity. If they are going to become fully authentic in their sexuality, they are going to have to face all of the parts of them that has resisted that honest, authentic, transparent expression,
Mm-hmm.
both physically and mentally. So, like, for instance, the voice is a common place where people are literally choked up. There's a part, there's a part if someone, even when someone consciously gets to the place, okay, I want to express my truth, sexual truth, in an honest way, in a negotiated, consensual way.
It could be just simply asking for what you need, or simply expressing your desires that may be outside of the norm, outside of the sort of regular, vanilla, conventional sexual patterns that people have been taught are okay, right?
Yeah, that's normal.
Right.
We have
Convention.
this concept of normal that no one's ever defined, and but yet we know when it's not normal, kind of attitude in the culture at large, and this authoritarian kind of creed of normal is terrified people to stay in some range of narrow range and not to speak to another person, not to reveal. This is what I call sexual authenticity disorder. This is an extreme fear of revealing or someone else discovering your authentic sexuality, its frequency, all the parameters of it, as freaky as it might get. And clearly there is a lot of what I call fetishsexuality going on there. But the sexual authenticity disorder is it's such a deep part of the neurosis of the culture that people do all kinds of unhealthy, risky, out of integrity ways, because that sexual expression, whatever that truth is, isn't going to go away. It's going to get what it wants one way and another, generally. And when it's unconscious, especially, it has all kinds of ways to break down one's, okay, I'm not going to do that again, kind of rationality, that cognitive determination. But that's usually no match for the unconscious part that has the power, tremendous power. It's a separate part of us, the sex creature. It's operating on its own agenda, at least for people who are what I call fetishsexuals. It is a distinct persona, different from their social everyday persona. And this is what I talk about the mask. My work is about bringing them out both. There's no reason to be afraid to there are lots of reasons to be afraid to show your truth, but there's no reason for one to deny for themselves first. Start with, so this is personal empowerment and embodiment. This is about getting connected first to yourself before you go and engage anyone else. The first place to start is to get into your own journey, your own process. You don't need to get somewhere per se. You just need to start and know you're on a journey. So you bringing in the practices and the tools and such to move down that path. It's a new path, so just start at the beginning and go forward following this principles. And this principle to start with is with the self, to learn to be embodied, learn to know where your resistances are and your limitations. So, like, for instance, if a dominant is bringing this authentic embodiment of this, in many cases, primal, ness into their bodies. This is our alpha, beta, mammalian, territorial sensibility that's in our psychology that we've inherited from our mammal ancestry. I mean, literally, these are parts of the brain structures and such that we carry forth in our own development, excuse me, as we grow up. And so these are, we stand erect at 2 or 3 years old, we first crawled, we didn't move, and then we started to crawl like that's kind of a reptile brain kicking in, and then we stand erect, and that's our mammal brain, and along with the psychologies that go along with each of those stages of the development. So like there's again this dichotomy of what's true and what we restrain and hold back. So that primal energy has mostly been socially, contained. Oh, I'm not that way. No, I'm a sweet man, and so a lot of challenge for men in particular in this regard, but women too, everybody, because we've not been connected to our bodies, we've not been connected to our authentic sexuality. So it is clumsy. It can be clumsy and awkward. So this is the phase where, yeah, if you're there, that's where you have to go into that awkwardness, into that, find and that's a tension, in the body. Again, there's a part that's opposing and there's a part that's trying to push through. And you have to dwell down into those layers to start to untangle them and empower the one that is, your aware thought is, yeah, I want my intention, that's another important key in this process and taking this journey for the individual is intention, having the intention, I want to be an empowered, authentic sexual being. That's a powerful statement that I made that I know is true for me. I go, yeah, that's absolutely the rock bottom truth. No question about it. So that's a powerful anchor for me to take in then to my own journey. And when I get tripped in places where, whoa, I'm not a powerful being there, or I'm not showing up with that. In other words, there's a resistance and a restraint. This is kind of like the hero's journey of becoming sexual authentic. You're going to face your demons and your resistances and such to break through. Now, some of this isn't that complicated either. Some of it you don't even need to do kind of emotional work. You just do it at the body level of just, for instance, in a gesture with a flogger or something, someone's kind of can see that they're
limp wristing it.
Yeah, they're not in this primal, the primal animal knows the thrust. It's millions of years of instinctual gesturing have given it the instantaneous expression. There's no need to think about it. But if there's a kink in the flow, someone can just start to practice, slow it down. Okay, just where is that arc where they can start to connect with it, and gradually, and this can start to get them where they're suddenly, oh yeah, I got that, are in it now. And no, because this is a natural embodiment. This is why I talk about embodiment versus role playing.
It feels good, that arc, that sort of energetic, you're getting into the play, and it feels good. There's a loss, or lessening of self-consciousness, of having to hold myself back.
Right. It is literally unleashing, this is, you've been leashed, and this is unleashing that natural body instinct. So, and this is putting someone then in touch with the persona behind that, the one that is, fuck yeah, I can hit, oh yeah, there's a voicing on, right at the edge of that too. That one can get in contact with that. Yeah, let that voice out. Sometimes, it's coming from an origin of not words, but just, sounds like that. But there are words, as all of this has gotten refined over into this contemporary era where these are mythic stories now have come out of that in this realm of eros, and that's what Fetihsexuality is entering this mythic realm of eros, where those myths are populated by archetypal personas of one power exchange sort or another
Hmm.
occurring in dyads and pairs. I believe in the gene pool, these things are actually, you're going to find your counterpart somewhere in the gene pool. It's already been, set up that way in the genetic level. Then in the collective mythic level, this archetypal level, there is the equivalent archetypal pairing as well, and that's how people are finding each other now on sites like FetLife, into this whole pantheon of different personifications that these erotic creatures take on, and are looking to engage with each other. And this is what it's like a dance, like the tango. I mean, that's what these energies are looking to dance together. Really, it's a mutual dance, even if there's an extreme power exchange. To me, when it's good, it is a dance. DSM is powerful, potent when it is a dance between these two energies going on. So you're staying connected through actually a deeper connecting, that your two souls come together and do this dance. It's about staying connected together. That's again, that happens through learning embodiment and presence, that you can step in with someone in that potent way together, and you feel. That's why it's so potent, because you literally feel, that's physical. You feel their connection to you and your connection to them. And that's a very powerful experience, to literally feel that connection.
Wonderful. I mean, you've shared so much, and it raises up a lot of questions. And I like that you mentioned a site like FetLife. I'll just kind of footnote that. In that, my experience of FetLife, it really allows people to self-select and organize themselves into their very fetishes, and their fetishes are very clearly reflected and outlined, and there's a whole set of rituals or practices or images that associate with different fetishes. And it's such a great site, and it allows people to do that, as well as connect with other people who are wanting or seeking exploration and expression of their own fetishes. And it's just a whole gamut, and it's really amazing that way. And but moving on, but getting into, I think another topic you brought up was, let me make this transition. It's like, it's the lessening of control, right? It's like, how does one go into, especially with a fetish like, primacy? It's like you're really allowing someone to tap into like a primal sadist, or, a primal dominant power. And it's the lessening of control, but not a complete letting go of control. Like there has to be some restraint that is appropriate, for consent, appropriate to, like, I'm really letting my primal, badass, dominant self out, and it's very feral, and it's very, my primal, will growl, will actually make these sort of, really deep, in my body vocal intonations, and it can be very animistic. And, and for a lot of people that's frightening. Like, is there still a person there? Is there still some consciousness there that is watching over this? Am I safe? Right? And there's potential for, like one of my teachers would say, we all like pain, but none of us wants to be damaged, right? We don't want to be harmed in a way that creates serious damage.
Mm-hmm.
And, how do you like round that curve? Like, what is that discernment between, oh, what this person has going on is just an overt amount of repressive control over their authentic sexual, fetish, sexuality. And, that's just a repressive type of control, versus, oh no, this is actually developing into more appropriate, self-control. I don't use self-control, but it's, there's still there, right?
Yeah.
There's a there that can honor like the boundaries of consent. There's a there that can be trusted to not violate consent or the boundaries of consent in a scene or, with another person. Do you want to
Yeah.
talk to that? Because that invariably raises red flags for people. Like, okay, what about this?
Yeah, no, it's an excellent topic, an important topic, and this is where I look at this is where we're facing paradox here,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and then how do we handle, how does one consciously handle paradox in a mature, responsible, accountable way, because the instinct side is coming from this predator prey level. It is out for blood, it is out to eat and it's devour, and that energy isn't and that's
And that's
what's so
hot.
what's
That's really hot, and that's really sexy if it's contained and it's really like
yeah, totally. That's why people go into the fetish realms, because it's really hot
yeah.
to do that. But then that question is, of how does that work? Where, oh, what if I go off the deep edge, or go, people have that fear. And it is kind of like, honestly, kind of like a reefer madness kind of hysteria about, oh, people will do this. I mean, not that there aren't psychopaths and sociopaths out there who are literally doing harm, but this is separate from any of that discussion. This is about people who are intending to consciously engage this authentic part of themselves. So so back to the paradox, how does one integrate those in a way that keeps you anchored in the other side of the paradox? This is sacred and profane. It's like the yin yang of Eros is what I look at. DS is one side, the sacred side. BDSM is the profane side, and so the way those fit together in the model that I use is there's two chambers, ritually thinking of this chamber of DS, dominance and submission. This is the place where all the negotiations, the agreements, the hearts to hearts, this place where you've built the trust and the connection and the agreements to take this journey into the EDSM side, where you've negotiated those edges. And this is where someone can connect with their intention. Yeah, above all, do no harm. I'm not here to harm anyone's soul or body, or damage, as that term used earlier. And so that's the heart of it right there. Then, so when you cross into the inner chamber, which is held within that outer chamber, the center is still the same. That heart to heart place where, you really did get clear with your partner that, yeah, I'm going to honor my agreements, your boundaries, what we've agreed on is sacred. I won't, that intention in me is right in the heart of, no matter how primal or, edgy or off the charts predator I become, in a negotiated scene with a partner. And then again, like, that's the part of me that is paying attention to her breath and is she present with me? Is there something, and this is the place where that center from the DS side is gonna, if I'm not clear, I'm gonna stop and just say, hey, I want to check in, and I was curious, if I'm seeing something and it's not clear to me what it is, my responsibility is to stop and listen, ask, check in, and this is a beautiful part about ritual. What people can learn is that a lot of people would think, oh, I don't want to spoil the scene, I don't want to interrupt the energy, and it doesn't. You're present. If you're present right there, that's all part of being present, and you're right in the scene. So it's either, no, I'm fine, this is cool, okay, great, or, wow, I did have this little thing come up, but I got it now, I'm good, I can go, we'll deal with that later, or right now something is up, and okay, we're going to shift then, let's open into what needs to happen in that regard. So this is how that concern about, well, if I let my primal energy out on the alpha side, am I just, this is what's so important about people understanding. This is the fourth principle in my key 5 keys is sexual shadow, or shadow generally. Of to take this journey, people really need to be looking at their shadows closely, because it'll still want to operate. The shadow operates out of integrity. It doesn't give a shit about boundaries, agreements, any of those kinds of noble aspects, so it needs to be in check by this, other deeper part of you, the soulful, authentic part of you that is the great majority of people. There are tens of millions of people participating in kink, and I'm confident that because you can just see from the 20 years now of me taking the journey through the kink community and world that, everybody's working on consent and negotiation and how to go deeper and try, best practices and all this. So it's a very well established playground, with clear rules and accountabilities and methods to pause or stop, or this is really has allowed and it's still new. There's still more to learn and people to go, and this is where I'm wanting to open the conversation into some of these areas I'm talking about, because I think they're clearly ignored in the academic and clinical realms of psychology and sexuality, sexual psychology. So this is kind of like the new frontier is being established, and myself and many others are stepping forward into that regard to bring other information and other points of view and other considerations into the view of sexuality, human sexuality. So
yeah, I just kind of was really and if I know you've probably explained this before, but I wanted to bring it up. It's like that DS side, that is the sacred. It's sort of, I would label that as consciousness. It's consciousness. It is has an element of compassion to it, of love, of care for my partner. And that is like where we do the negotiation from. It's like, okay, there's a real person here who's talking to another real person. We're negotiating and saying, I deeply care for this individual and I want them to be well, even though we're about to go into next in the realm of BDSM, it's going to get pretty dark. It's going to get pretty, hairy, painful. We're going to play out a scene. It's going to cause restraint. There are going to be some pain being offered, some rope being offered, some other form of restraint being offered. And as well as sort of like this primal, very dark character that's going to arise. But there's an element of me that's, consciousness, or that DS aspect that's always present through the scene. It's there sort of as a monitor. It's there to pay attention. It's there to, remind myself that, this person who's probably, if I'm in my dominant role, this person's very, very vulnerable and they're pretty much in my power and I need to take care of them. And that part of me is there sort of along for the ride and the journey, but it's also kind of guiding the play. Is that what you're, talking to when you say, hey, there's the DS aspect, which is the sacred, and there's the BDSM, which is the more profane, but they work in conjunction with one another.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize that this can apply to a one-off scene, these principles, or as some people do, bring them into their day-to-day relationships. They have a DS relationship where one partner is in the lead and one follows, and whatever ways they've negotiated that, but they have an intention and desire to hold that dynamic, and not an erotic sense, but in a lifestyle sense. So that range can be going on the DS side. And this is also the place I want to bring in that about being present. Before you enter the inner chamber, sit together for a moment, for instance, and just, kind of hold each other or do some movement together. Just let your bodies get or there with each other.
Breath work, like, some of my teachers teach, synchronization of the breath, breathe together, and it allows you to get more in sync with the other person. If I'm breathing your breath and you're allowing me to breathe your breath with me, or you're sharing your breath with me, then that's a very intimate exercise.
Yeah, and there's no specific practices in these regards. It's whatever two people can do to feel their connection, literally and that's the key word, is feel. This is what I talk about, the body connection, because the body will connect or not with another's body. It loves to feel another's body close by. So beginning your scene with some sort of body to body kind of slow pace, to just ease, to build this, let the bodies feel this sense of intimacy and trust. Once the body feels it, then that really opens the gateway to explore and experience, because the resistances have been released. These are tensions, muscular tensions in the body. Especially if you're newer to each other, this is an important way to really cross through a lot of the resistances that are there. I mean, these resistances are real things, and they at some point would need to be addressed, but we can put those aside often enough, because they're kind of been with us for decades maybe, so we don't need to work it out right now. And this is partly about what being present and embodied is to your opening space to allow a bigger part of you to express and experience than this resistant way. The resistances put so many restraints on our movement, body language, energetics. So this is a good way to enter into the BDSM realm once you've gotten that present with each other, and then you can shift and embody these. That embodiment, this archetypal embodiment, when one enters into the primal level, it is a literal embodiment of the alpha characteristics, say, on the dominant side, in the power exchange. So these are both instincts, but they've been refined to where, I can be the authority figure, the priest, or the teacher, or the biker, or the badass, the rapist, the motherfucker, the whole pantheon of that dark masculine, is at hand, and each person will have their own particulars and individual energies that they do want to express. And this is why I talk about how it occurs collectively in the counter archetype is there. I mean, it's verified. I mean, there's tens of millions of people in the kink world engaging these archetypal counterpart dimensions that are looking for a daddy and a daughter, or whatever these pairings might be, master, slave, etc. And again, I'm speaking as a het male dom, and totally aware and support and encourage that there's all kinds of manifestations from the male, female, masculine, feminine, and everything in between. But this is how I generally, I can speak best from that point of view. So another interesting thing about this idea of embodying the archetype and these primal energies, which are coming from, mammals and other parts of our heritage, part of the support of that I reflected on, or the manifestation of that characteristic of humans to embody different energetics is, from back into the tribal cultures and the indigenous cultures, it was not uncommon for them to create the persona of the eagle or the bear, by putting skins and feathers and bringing this energy into themselves. That was the intention, was to call it in really big time. I want the power of the eagle to have vision and see, and have the dance that went with that, and so, and was the movements of the creature, with the intention of bringing that creature into the self,
Now you're getting into more animism or animalistic shamanism.
Well, this is what I'm talking about. Embodiment, is and to just maybe give it a little more foundation and a kind of a sensibility to reflect back on that idea I just talked about, that this is a heritage, that we already have of an embodiment of these primal energetics, and kink is unique in that it brings in this in eros, And that's why it's so compelling, is because there's such a powerful erotic charge, both to take and also to give, to yield, to surrender. That's a powerful state, as powerful. It's like I say, it's yin yang, to both surrender and to take, are these primal, ingrained, inherent ecstasies, that we yearn to experience.
It taps into something very deep in us.
Yeah, and this is what's the problem is that that depth is there and it's going on, and we seek it out. But when we haven't learned to be sexually honest, and we're afraid to be transparent and open and honest, and often for good reason, that people are hide or mask their authentic sexuality because of the repercussions that could occur in certain communities or families or partnerships. So this is very challenging time for people to. Well, what's amazing is tens of millions of people have stepped up. You get on sites like FetLife or across the board, all kinds of alternative sexualities are jumped right out into the culture and are quasi acceptable now. Kink is kind of still way out on the periphery, but it has crossed across the divide, and it is gaining a political momentum, and there's different groups that are standing up for the rights of people to be who they are sexually in regards to kink, especially.
It's kind of funny. As a sort of a side note on that, I had a friend, you sent out the notification for your webinar, this webinar that we're on right now. And I said, hey, I'm interested in that. I got an almost like immediate message from a friend who said that, hey, by the way, it's like when you denote that you're interested or attending an event, it tends to broadcast. Facebook will post that on your wall, or it'll broadcast it to all of your Facebook contacts. And I got a message from a friend, hey, by the way, do you know that you're letting everyone on Facebook know that you're into kink? I just might want to be aware of that. So it's just it's like that, right? And like for her, that was a big deal. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe you're advertising this. And, to be quite honest, these webinars are they're very enlightening. We do touch on some topics, but they're just not what I would consider terribly edgy, not like what's on my FetLife profile or anything, or what I practice, but it's like just as like the notification that we're potentially interested in, kink, and what does that mean? And just brings up people's protections or cackles, or like, oh, what does that mean?
Yeah. And this points to, again, this disembodiment, where we're shutting off that, hiding, masking that authentic part of it. I mean, everybody does, and it's really a horrible internal conflict that is generated by the amount of energy that we take to hide and mask our sexuality, as well as the ways that we operate it in ways that are out of integrity or in shadow, all because of this fear of being honest about our sexuality. It's safer to hide, that's the comfort zone, is to keep it hidden in the dark, but we're entering an era where the light is wanting to shine, it's wanting to emerge into the light. And this takes, pathways and guides, and this is what I talk about in this emerging field of kink-oriented psychologies, is to bring these sensibilities into a therapeutic realm of, being how someone to support and help someone facilitate the conflicts and the inner things that are tangled up, and the confusion about, so how can I be this way and still want this, and does that make me I'm not. I mean, people are really facing some fundamental challenges in their psyche about the culture they grew up in and who they really are. The culture was, very sex negative, and we don't talk about sex.
Still do. Yeah, still is. Yeah. That's all I have to say. It still is sex negative to a certain respect, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think we're about at the end of today's session, and thanks so much for facilitating the discussion, Patrick. And it was scratched the surface of some of the territory and hopefully brought some good content for people to
It does.
ponder.
We had a few people show up. Did you want to see if there were any questions?
Oh,
Or
yeah. Does I think there's this. Oops. It looks like. Did I do that? Oh. Um, how do I do this? There's a raise your hand thing if anybody has a question,
or they can put it in the chat.
or they can put it in the chat. So it doesn't look like anybody's coming through with any questions. Oops, somebody's.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for speaking, both of you. I didn't have anything to add. I just wanted to say thank you, and I'm sorry that I missed hearing the first 30 minutes because it's Saturday, and I was like, wait, I think I'm supposed to be doing something. Oh, dang it. So yes, thank you for the last half of it that I did get to hear. I totally agree. I work as a sex surrogate and also as a nanny.
Uh-oh.
And I feel like...
Hold on one second. Ryan, Barack, can you mute your experience? Thank you. Go ahead, Intimacy.
I was saying I work as a sex surrogate and also as a nanny. And I feel like most of what you said, both of you, can be applied to so many different parts of life. You know, child rearing and platonic relationships, business relationships. I mean, honestly, I feel like everyone should look at every aspect of their life and figure out how to apply like authentic connection, you know, with head and body simultaneously in every aspect. It just makes life better.
Yeah, you're right. It is the focus here is on this kink-oriented sexuality, but most of the things we've talked about were just really simply how to live life, you know, in a more present, transparent, less tense, more integrity kind of way.
I agree. So thank you guys, and I'm gonna mute my mic now so other people can talk if they like.
Yeah, thanks for speaking up. Nice to meet you.
I think Ryan's trying to break through. Ryan, your experience is really garbled.
That's like alien. I knew it, Ryan. E2 Klaatu or something like that. All right, thank you.
All right. So I think that could be a wrap.
Yeah, sounds good. Was someone else just popped up there? I think, you see that?
Well, I see Intimacy Kanamore just made her video feed visible, and she's waving and saying hello.
Okay.
And you know, Ryan just sort of popped up and said hello as well.
All right.
All right.
So thank you all for coming, and thank you, Patrick, for coordinating the conversation. Good job.
Sure thing.
We'll bye for now.
Okay. Take care, Galen, and we'll connect later.
You bet.
Okay.